woods are these, wrote Robert Frost. Today, woods are our focus, and our focus is on the forest, but not as a poetic inspiration. Instead, we're talking about how forests can be resilient and resistant when it comes to flooding and climate change. Frost's words were lovely, dark, and deep, and today we'll find out how they also absorb, protect, and restore. Good afternoon, and thanks for stopping by Across the Fence. I'm Keith Silva. Trees provide habitat for wildlife, stabilize soil, provide shade. Not to mention, trees supply the oxygen all living things need to, live. Trees may also hold the key to reduce flooding during extreme storm events that have become more and more prevalent in recent years. Joining me to talk about forest flooding and resiliency is Shawn White. She's the Watershed Forestry Coordinator for the University of Vermont Extension's Lake Champlain Sea Grant Program. Thanks for talking with me about this topic, Shawn.
I'm glad to be here.
Before we go too far into the woods, what is a forestry coordinator have to do with Lake Champlain?
The forests and the lack of forests have a big impact on water quality. All of the streams and rivers that are surrounded by forests, those all make their way to, eventually to Lake Champlain. And so forests are able to protect the water quality of those streams, and so therefore, consequently, Lake Champlain. But it's not just, Lake Champlain that I work to protect. It's not just forests I work to protect, but also the human communities that live on streams and rivers. And as you said, these are being impacted more and more frequently by flooding. And forests are really critical in terms of absorbing a lot of that stormwater and protecting those communities.
Right. Do we know how much rain falls each? I mean, we know they keep track, but how much actually gets into the ground?
In a forested area,
yes.
The trees intercept a lot of that rain. So the leaves and branches catch that rain. A lot of the rain that lands on a forest actually gets absorbed somehow, either by landing on those leaves or by soaking into the soils. And so forests really reduce the volume of water that runs off the surface and into those streams and rivers. Right. So that's how they prevent flooding. And
that's what we're talking about. Is we're talking about the water that runs off, not the water that gets soaked in. Right. How forested is Vermont?
Vermont historically was 90% forested. Currently, it's about 78%. Okay. Most of that's privately owned, but we're losing forest every year. And they're also getting more fragmented. More roads and driveways are being cut into the forest, and that reduces the effectiveness of forests to absorb stormwater and rainfall.
I think a lot of folks would say 70%. That sounds like a lot, yeah. But there are several state and federal programs and nonprofits that plant trees. What's the best way to learn more?
If landowners are interested in planting trees, there's state and federal nonprofit programs that can pay to have those trees planted, so it's no cost to the landowner. The best way for landowners to pursue that, if they're interested, is to contact their local watershed group or conservation district. Okay. And if they don't know who that is, they can contact me and I can put them in touch.
We're going to have your contact information on the screen in just a second. When you said landowners, and I think about swaths of Vermont that are well forested, that's sort of what you're talking about. We're also talking about the urban forest too. Sure. People in suburbs, people in cities, towns. Those trees are in some ways more important because they're connected to a road, a hard surface, so that water is just going to run off into the lake.
Yeah, they're both important.
Sure.
So in urban areas, because there's so much impervious surface, trees can also really provide a place to absorb that water and keep it from ending up in the streams and rivers that then flood. Right. But forested land is also really important, especially along the smaller streams. I think a lot of people think that it's bigger streams that need trees and what they call riparian forests, yeah. But it's also those smaller ones as well. And in fact, even little rivulets and ditches. If we plant trees along those, that can really help reduce flooding.
It's all connected. It all makes a difference. How can people get in touch with you? You mentioned they can call you. Just
Yes.
call Shawn.
Right,
She'll take care of it
yeah,
all.
that's right. Probably the best thing to do is to contact Sea Grant.
Lake
There's
Champlain
the phone number's there.
Yep.
And they can connect people with
And
me.
that's the email, cgrant@uvm.edu or 802-777-9130. Shawn, thank you very much for talking with me about this.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
As you've heard us say, what rain the forest doesn't soak up, sooner or later finds its way to Lake Champlain. And that's where Across the Fences, Caleb May and Ben Willis went this summer as they tagged along with a group of students and researchers on the Marcelle Melosira to do some night fishing. Our story focuses on how researcher Amelia McReynolds studies how not to scare the fish when you're trying to study their behavior. Let's join Ben and the crew of the Marcelle Melosira as they take us on a midnight cruise on Lake Champlain.
As the sun sets over Lake Champlain, a team of UVM students gears up for a nighttime expedition aboard the university's research vessel, the Marcelle Melosira. They'll be assisting PhD candidate Maya McReynolds in an experiment that could reshape how we gather data for fisheries management. McReynolds is tackling a critical question. Could the ships used to collect fish data actually be scaring fish away, skewing population estimates?
There's a big push in the Great Lakes to measure vessel avoidance, and that's a project that's led by USGS and Cornell University, using autonomous surface drones and underwater drones with autonomous echo sounders mounted to them. And so there's a lot of different teams that are looking at this same question with slightly different acoustic equipment, slightly different ecological settings in different lakes with other vessels. And so it's a really exciting time because we have all this stuff that's coming together, where we can start to get a picture of what is the amount of bias coming from this behavior, and then also how is that different in different systems.
The team will work through the night, collecting data that could help answer this question. Their first step, deploying a floating gill net. This specially designed net targets alewives, small forage fish found near the surface at night. The net will remain in the water for several hours before retrieval.
It's graded mesh, and so we have very small mesh sizes that catch small fish, up to a larger mesh size that catches larger fish, really just targeting alewife. Those are the main fish that occur near the surface at night, at least in these kind of offshore, colder waters. And so we deploy the special alewife-specific floating gill net, and we'll let that fish for anywhere from 4 to 6 hours. And we always pick that up on our way back in.
As darkness falls, the crew prepares for the experiment's most complex phase. The ship is lit by an eerie red light, designed to reduce the risk of scaring off alewives near the surface. Earlier in the day, the crew deployed acoustic platforms beneath the lake. Now, Captain Taylor Resnick maneuvers the Marcelle Melosira over these platforms, while sensors capture how fish react to the approaching ship.
And we'll start doing vessel passes over the platforms 1 to 2 hours after sunset. And so we drive in a square where, starting 1 kilometer from the platform, Taylor fires up the Marcelle Melosira in either diesel or electric, and then we have the trawl out or not. And we'll drive for 2 kilometers, passing over the platform. And the whole time it's recording data, so we can measure that fish response as we approach, and then as we pass, and as we leave. And typically that sampling would go from about 8 p.m. to 1 to 3 in the morning, depending on how the night goes. And one component of that is pelagic trawling. And so to trawl, I will decide where we want to sample, whether we'll go shallow and try to target alewife, or deeper in the water and try to target rainbow smelt which are another major forage species in Lake Champlain that don't have as strong of a hearing ability as alewife do. And so they're kind of our control species, you know, where we expect alewife to react to the vessel. Rainbow smelt probably won't because they're deeper in the water column. They can't hear as well. And so we'll trawl, you know, shallow or deep and pull the trawl on board, work up all the fish.
Whoa.
So we'll take, again, just species, total length.
$59.
And so it's cool because we have all these fish that we sample with nets. We know where in the water column they come from, and we also know their length and species. And so we can match that up with the acoustic data, where we can see a position in the water column and a relative size, but not an absolute species and length.
Back at the Echo Center, Maya plugs the collected data into her computer.
Okay, so here we have the WBAT, which is our autonomous transceiver, and we popped out this pretty heavy-duty waterproof plug, and we can recover the data from the USB drive. You can see some fish targets moving really slowly through the beam, so they're swimming really slow, and they're deeper in the water column. So you can see that this is a fish that's diving down and then coming back up. You know, we have this fish coming right up to the surface, and those are fish that are foraging during the night. And so you can see here, it's like, all right, we have rainbow colored dots. This is where the net data really comes in handy to say, okay, 100% of the fish that we sampled in the upper couple meters of the water column were alewife, so we can conclude that these are probably alewife.
Maya's research is a vital step toward improving fisheries management. By understanding how fish react to research vessels, scientists can collect more accurate data, ensuring better decisions for the health of our lakes and the ecosystems they sustain. From the shores of Lake Champlain and the Echo Center, I'm Ben Willis with Across the Fence.
Thanks, Ben. That takes care of our program today. My thanks to the hardworking crew behind the scenes who helped make our program possible. I'm Keith Silva. This is Across the Fence. Thank you for stopping by.